Good evening. This is our Friday night Bible study for Friday, May 29, 2026. And it'll be the last one for May, of course. Last weekend was Labor Day weekend, and I'm kind of getting out of touch with things. I used to like to pay attention to the Indianapolis 500, which I assume took place last Sunday, and I have heard absolutely nothing about it, so I don't know what happened. One thing that did hit the news this week was on Tuesday morning in Longview. No, not Longview, Texas, Longview, Washington. Now, if you're familiar with the western border between Oregon and Washington, then you know that the Columbia River comes down from farther east, and it gets to between Portland, Oregon, and Vancouver, Washington, and it makes a bend north, and it goes north for a little ways, and then it bends back west to go out to the Pacific Ocean. Right there at that northern bend, just north of that, is Longview, Washington, and there's a Weyerhaeuser lumber mill there. The byproducts of that lumber mill go to a paper plant. It used to be Weyerhaeuser, now it's Nippon something, and it's a packaging group. And then also right there along the river is a chemical company that provides some of the chemicals they need for the paper making that they do. To break down the wood chips from the lumber factory, they use a caustic solution called white liquor, something like that, and it contains sodium hydroxide, essentially lye, and some other caustic liquids. And they had that in a tank, and the tank gave way, and several people were injured. When I first heard about it, one of them had died, others were injured, and 9 were missing. The last story I read looked like it was from yesterday sometime. They had found 6 of the missing employees. All of them were deceased. And another one that had been found right away had also passed away. So that made the death toll officially a total of 8. And there are 3 more still to find. So you could see a death toll as high as 11 in this accident. And it's some people were saying the tank imploded. Some people were saying the tank ruptured. Some people said the tank exploded. The images looked like it caved in on the side because it went in instead of out. But it leaked that white liquor all over the place and caused a lot of damage and killed some people. So that was kind of the news this week. Other than that, I think we are prepared to get into our study. And while we're not necessarily rushing things so much now that we're out of Proverbs, I don't know how long it's going to take to read Ecclesiastes. We're going to talk about it first. But before we do that, we want to get started. So let's bow our heads. Our Father in heaven, we thank you so much that you have made this planet and its occupants an issue of your own personal concern. And we know that that's because you are love, and since you are love, then you treat us with love. And we want to learn to love you back. And we want to learn to trust you as well. We're going to read one of the more difficult books out of the Bible, and we want the Holy Spirit to help each person get not just understanding but a blessing from what we read in this book. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. For a lot of teachers, Ecclesiastes is something of a controversial book. There was a preacher out in California, I won't say his name, but he had a fairly prominent radio program, and when he got to Ecclesiastes, he told everybody he didn't like the book. And partly that was because of the use that certain people made of some of the texts in the book. We can talk about that when we get there. One of the greatest criticisms of the book that I hear from common people is, it's so depressing. And in fact, there are interpreters who will tell you that this was written when Solomon was depressed, so you can't take it for the truth. Well, okay, I don't think he was so much depressed as he was being realistic. And we're going to mention one thing that I think helps us understand. And yes, there is an element when it says everything is meaningless, or if you read it in the King James, vanity, vanity, everything's vanity, meaninglessness. It's almost as if he's a nihilist, Nihilist. Nihilism as a philosophy is the idea that life just doesn't make any sense. There's no purpose to life. There's no meaning to life. It just happens and then it's gone. That's the nihilistic viewpoint. And I read once where somebody suggested that one way to understand nihilism was to read the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series by Douglas Adams. And let me just briefly fill you in on that story. At some point in his story, he talks about some highly intelligent pan-dimensional beings who had decided that they wanted to know the answer. The answer to what? Well, the ultimate answer to the question of life, the universe, and everything. And so these people designed a hyper super computer, and once they got it going, they asked it for the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. And the computer said, well, I'm going to have to think about it. Well, okay. How long is it going to take? X number of million years. So, well, of course, none of them lived long enough, but this became a big deal, and the computer worked on this problem for those humpty million years. And when it got done, it was time for the readout, and the computer announced that the ultimate answer to the question of life, the universe, and everything was 42. And the people hearing the readout are upset. What sense can we make of that? 42? What's that? How's that supposed to help? And the computer said, I think perhaps your problem is you don't know what the question is. Well, okay, can you tell us what the question is? No. Oh, but I can design a computer that could tell you what the question is. And I said, well, okay, design it for us. Well, it turned out that the computer was going to be so big that it was going to actually be a planet, and that organic life would form part of the operational matrix of this computer. And so they went to a place known for building custom planets for highly rich people, and they got them to build a planet, and after that was done, they set it in its location in space and set it going. Well, as time goes on, it's about time for this question to be revealed, and the Vogons come through and destroy it to make room for a hyperspace bypass. And so the question is never delivered. And the story goes on. There's more things going on. But at some point, the characters in the story get told that it is not possible to know both the answer and the question regarding a particular universe. That if, in fact, somebody were to find a way to find both the answer and the question, the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything, for a given universe, that universe would instantly cease to exist and be replaced by something even more inexplicable. So that's the concept of nihilism. Life is meaningless. It's not possible to make sense of it. And we're not going to find it quite that bad in Ecclesiastes. Yes, Solomon does say everything is meaningless, and he's going to take 11 or 12 chapters to reveal all of that. But he does find purpose and meaning. And there's an interesting phrase that gets used in it. And I think what we want to do now is we need to go ahead and click like this so that you can read along with us and we can see what Solomon says in Ecclesiastes. So here we are, Ecclesiastes chapter 1. These are the words of the teacher, King David's son, who ruled in Jerusalem. Now, in the King James, that word is rendered preacher. Everything is meaningless, says the teacher, completely meaningless. What do people get for all their hard work under the sun? Now, there's the phrase that will get repeated throughout this book. And it is an important phrase to help us understand what Solomon means. Because what he's talking about isn't the universe. He's talking about under the sun. And it's likely that even in Solomon's day, people had enough of an understanding of cosmology and astronomy and so forth that they understood that the earth was a planet that rotated around the sun, and there was a limited number of other planets. And when he says under the sun, he's talking about a very limited portion of the entire universe, the part that we as humans experience. And we can get a little overinflated and a little self-important because that's all we experience. We don't experience anything that isn't under the sun. And so it can be hard to live as if there's something else. And there will be places in here where Solomon will make reference to those other places, but for the most part, he's talking about what happens under the sun. Now, I'm going to go one step further and suggest that Solomon lived quite a while before the Babylonian captivity. And for the most part, it wasn't until after the Babylonian captivity that the Jews began to have an understanding of an enemy of God and humanity that would become known in their language as the accuser, or the Satan. Satan is the Hebrew word for accuser. And that then when Jesus came to earth, he would refer to him as the devil. Solomon didn't have that cosmic conflict understanding. So he looks at life and he says something like this. And let me read on a little bit. Generations come and generations go, but the earth never changes. The sun rises and the sun sets, then hurries around to rise again. The wind blows south and then returns north. Around and around it goes, blowing in circles. Rivers run into the sea, but the sea is never full. Then the water returns again to the rivers and flows out again to the sea. That's the water cycle, and it's an important element of making life possible on our planet. That the sea yields up its water into the atmosphere to be returned to the earth, so that the rivers then run into the sea, and they just keep running into the sea, and around it goes. Everything is wearisome beyond description. No matter how much we see, we are never satisfied. No matter how much we hear, we are not content. History merely repeats itself. It's all been done before. Nothing under the sun, there's that phrase again, is truly new. Sometimes people say, here is something new. Our president likes to say, never been anything like this before. Nothing under the sun is truly new. Actually, it is old. Nothing is ever truly new. We don't remember what happened in the past, and in future generations, no one will remember what we are doing now. Now, the saying that historians like to use is, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. Well, those who know history end up repeating it as well, so maybe the study of history isn't as important as they say. But anyway, now he's made this outgoing statement of the cyclical nature of everything on earth, and he's saying that he doesn't see any meaning in it. It's just a cycle. It just comes and goes, and it's always the same, and nothing's truly new. So now he's going to get into why he's writing like this. Verse 12. I, the teacher, was king of Israel, and I lived in Jerusalem. I devoted myself to search for understanding and to explore by wisdom everything being done under heaven. I soon discovered that God has dealt a tragic existence to the human race. Now, there again we see that Hebrew mindset, that absent an understanding of an enemy of God, then everything that takes place on earth is God's doing, and therefore everything that happens on earth is God's will. And there are versions of that idea still being played out in religious circles today. Oh, well, that was God's will. He's got a reason for doing that. And Solomon says, well, I searched it out by wisdom. No, there's not a reason for it. Now, there is a religious tradition that suggests that God can't be understood, that we humans shouldn't bother because God is beyond our understanding, and there's some truth in that, and that what he does isn't intended to make sense to us. We in this group tend to disagree with that interpretation. Yes, in humility, we have to recognize there's always something we can learn. We will never fully understand life, the universe, and everything, if you wish to put it that way. But God has made the basic things understandable to us. And some of those things Solomon is going to spell out for us. Some of them he won't come to because he never had the information that we can have. But let's read on. I observed everything going on under the sun, and really it is all meaningless, like chasing the wind. What is wrong cannot be made right. What is missing cannot be recovered. And from the human perspective, there is a level of sense in that. Because people commit a crime, and other people are damaged and harmed by that. And we have a criminal justice system, but ultimately those wrongs can't be made right. We can only issue punishments that we hope will deter future bad behavior. And Solomon was part of the justice system in Israel, so he saw these people come, and he probably saw people come in repeatedly, that they were broken people, and they did these destructive things, and even though they got punished for it, the next thing you know, when they're free again, they're doing it again, because that's who they are. That's the situation, and so in that sense, then, without the intervention of the Creator, what is wrong cannot be made right. What is missing cannot be recovered. I said to myself, look, I am wiser than any of the kings who ruled in Jerusalem before me. I have greater wisdom and knowledge than any of them. So I set out to learn everything from wisdom to madness and folly. But I learned firsthand that pursuing all this is like chasing the wind. The greater my wisdom, the greater my grief. To increase knowledge only increases sorrow. Solomon spent a lifetime in search of wisdom. He sought to understand how the universe and the world around us works. And he attained a lot of knowledge, and he attained a certain level of wisdom. But he concludes here that the more you know about the world, the worse it looks, and the more painful it is to you, because you see how broken is the human race, and how bad it is, and how everything we try to do to fix ourselves fails. Yeah, from that perspective, our world is a dreary and depressing place. And if we don't admit that, then we can never hope for something better. Hope doesn't exist if you think you've got everything already. There's no need for it. Only when you have an understanding that there's something missing in life as you currently live it, can you then look forward with hope to a day when better becomes normal. Chapter 2. I said to myself, come on, let's try pleasure. Let's look for the good things in life. Did Solomon do that? Absolutely. Hundreds of wives, wealth beyond measure, all the finest food that the world of his day could provide for him. And when we read through that, we read some of the provisions that were brought to Israel, to King Solomon's palace. Well, what does he say about it? I found that this too was meaningless. In other words, beyond what you need, the necessities of life, more doesn't really help. And I think we mentioned that when we got to that passage about more and more there in the book of Proverbs, that this idea that somehow if a little is good, more must be better, and we keep looking for more, and it turns us into never satisfied because we're always wanting more. And Solomon says that approach is meaningless. You don't improve your life by pleasure. Doesn't help. So I said, laughter is silly. What good does it do to seek pleasure? After much thought, I decided to cheer myself with wine. And while still seeking wisdom, I clutched at foolishness. In this way, I tried to experience the only happiness most people find during their brief life in this world. Now, again, there's that. He didn't say under the sun this time, but he did say in this world. So he's being clear. He's talking about life in the limited understanding of this planet and the people who live on it. Now, that's all we experience. Not a single human has been any farther away from this planet than the moon. And cosmically speaking, that's not very far at all. So, we're stuck here. This is our reality. This is what we know. We don't experience what's beyond all that. So we don't know what life is like out there.
I'd like to know what it's like beyond this bedroom.
Yeah. I also tried to find meaning by building huge homes for myself and by planting beautiful vineyards. I made gardens and parks, filling them with all kinds of fruit trees. I built reservoirs to collect the water to irrigate my many flourishing groves. I bought slaves, both men and women, and others were born into my household. I also owned large herds and flocks, more than any of the kings who had lived in Jerusalem before me. Well, there weren't very many because his dad is the one who established Jerusalem. So,
You know what I'm hearing?
what are you hearing?
I'm hearing him lamenting the loss of normality.
In other words, he tried all this stuff that most people couldn't get, and he concluded at the end of it all that
He would be better off being a peasant.
yeah. And we'll get to places where he pretty much says that much. I collected great sums of silver and gold, the treasure of many kings and provinces. I hired wonderful singers, both men and women, and had many beautiful concubines. I had everything a man could desire. So I became greater than all who had lived in Jerusalem before me, and my wisdom never failed me.
But he'd had an ego with that.
I'll bet he did, for sure. Anything I wanted, I would take. I denied myself no pleasure. I even found great pleasure in hard work, a reward for all my labors. But as I looked at everything I had worked so hard to accomplish, it was all so meaningless, like chasing the wind.
That his hard work was probably done by the hands of others.
I don't know. They say Solomon built the temple, but he probably didn't put a hand to much of anything that actually made the temple a building. He had the Jews do it through forced labor.
He ordered it to be done and then took the credit for it being built.
Well, isn't that what we do today?
Yeah.
So and so built the Empire State Building. Well, a lot of so and so's had to work to make the Empire State Building go up. And probably the man who is named just provided the money and the vision for it, but he probably didn't flatten a single rivet or carry a single steel beam or lay a single brick or anything like that. But as I looked at everything I had worked so hard to accomplish, it was all so meaningless, like chasing the wind. There was nothing really worthwhile anywhere. So I decided to compare wisdom with foolishness and madness, for who could do this better than I, the king, Footnote A, the meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain for that. All right. I thought, wisdom is better than foolishness, just as light is better than darkness. For the wise can see where they are going, but fools walk in the dark. Yet I saw that the wise and the foolish share the same fate. Both will die. Now, granted, there are some fools who are so foolish that they shorten their lives, but ultimately both will die. So I said to myself, since I will end up the same as the fool, what's the value of all my wisdom? This is also meaningless, for the wise and the foolish both die. The wise will not be remembered any longer than the fool. In the days to come, both will be forgotten. So I came to hate life, because everything done here under the sun is so troubling. Everything is meaningless, like chasing the wind. I came to hate all my hard work here on earth, for I must leave to others everything I have earned. And who can tell whether my successors will be wise or foolish? And history tells us that Solomon's successor was generally foolish. Yet they will control everything I have gained by my skill and hard labor and hard work under the sun. How meaningless. So I gave up in despair, questioning the value of all my hard work in this world. Now, hard work is a necessary part of life. If people don't work hard, cars aren't built, buildings aren't constructed, crops aren't grown. Without people putting forward effort, we'd have a pretty rotten life. So, work is an important thing, and it does benefit others, and that's something that I don't know if Solomon missed that understanding, or if possibly because of his perspective as king, it didn't really click with him. I recently heard a radio program where they were talking about finding meaning and purpose in life, and the importance for the individual of having a reason for doing what they do. And I think that's important for us too. Now, then you read this book and Solomon says, well, it's all meaningless. But he's not telling us that it's wrong to have a purpose and meaning for what we do. He's just saying, given what his wisdom was able to grasp, he couldn't find ultimately a meaning for it, because in the end everybody just dies and they don't come back. Some people work wisely with knowledge and skill, then must leave the fruit of their efforts to someone who hasn't worked for it. This too is meaningless, a great tragedy. And my taskbar isn't going away over there, and I can't see the information I need to see. Why isn't that going away? Let me look at my taskbar settings real quick and make sure that it's set to auto hide. Yeah, automatically hide the taskbar, but it's not doing it. And I need to see something down there. I guess I could, or do I have to do that over here? Give me just a second here. Well, that wasn't what I was hoping to do. It didn't make the taskbar go away, it made my screen go away. Well, that's not helpful. Um, and Windows is being so helpful. I can't push that up above the top to get to what I want to get to, because if I do, it wants to maximize it, and then I still can't see what I need to see. Well, that doesn't help either. That makes it go away. Let's do that. Microsoft can be so helpful at times. They make it do something, but then it doesn't do it. They don't tell you why it doesn't do it, and you need to see something, and they don't let you do it. Where were we here? Okay. Some people work wisely with knowledge and skill, then must leave the fruit of their efforts to someone who hasn't worked for it. This too is meaningless, a great tragedy. So what do people get in this life for all their hard work and anxiety? Their days of labor are filled with pain and grief. Even at night, their minds cannot rest. It is all meaningless. So I decided there is nothing better than to enjoy food and drink and to find satisfaction in work. Now, see, now he's saying there is purpose and meaning. Enjoy the things God put here for you to enjoy. Find satisfaction in work. He created us to do that, and if we do that, we find satisfaction in it. It gives us purpose and meaning because that's the way the Creator designed us to work. Then I realized that these pleasures are from the hand of God. For who can eat or enjoy anything apart from Him? Hebrew reads apart from me, but they did it as in the Greek and Syriac versions. God gives wisdom, knowledge, and joy to those who please Him. But if a sinner becomes wealthy, God takes the wealth away and gives it to those who please Him. This too is meaningless, like chasing the wind. Now he's stating the standard Old Covenant understanding there, that God would bless those who obeyed and would curse those who disobeyed. That was the conditions of the Old Covenant, and Jews tended to believe that was the way God intended things to be. And so he would write that here. But he'd say, it's meaningless. So what if God gives it somebody else? Moving on. This is the part that's been turned into a popular song. For everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven. And by under heaven, he probably means under the heaven that they would refer to as the sky or the firmament, the atmosphere. There's a time for every activity within the atmospheric blanket around this earth. So, there's a time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to harvest. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to cry and a time to laugh. A time to grieve and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace and a time to turn away. A time to search and a time to quit searching. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be quiet and a time to speak. I guess wisdom is knowing those things. The Serenity Prayer says, God, grant me the courage to change the things I can, the serenity to accept the things I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. So, wisdom is knowing what time it is in the sense that it's being used in this passage. It's time to do this, a time to do that. What time is it? What should be done at this time, and then do it. So, some people have a hard time knowing when it's time to be quiet. That's hard.
When's that?
What?
When's that?
Did you say who's that?
When is it time to be quiet?
Well, when you're in court and the other side is speaking, it's time to be quiet, but not everybody knows that.
Well, yeah, that's probably a good idea.
I heard a divorce case today, and the woman in particular, neither one was a really nice person. It's no wonder they were breaking up, but the woman just couldn't let anything pass. Her husband would say something, she'd contradict him. No, that's not how it was. And the judge kept having to tell her to be quiet. It's his time to speak, not yours. Well, yeah, if you're going to be like that, yeah, it's hard to make a marriage work. If you can't let somebody be wrong, ever, you're going to be very hard to live with.
Go to YouTube and type in, do a search for a YouTube channel called Sovereign Justice.
Okay.
It's not what you think it is.
Yeah. A time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. And of course, in the popular song, then that last half line there was the focus of the song, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. This was back during the protests about the Vietnam War. Time for peace. We need peace, not war. So there's a time for everything. There's an appropriate time for all of these activities. Wisdom is knowing when to speak and when to be quiet and all these other things. What do people really get for all their hard work? I have seen the burden God has placed on us all. Yet God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart. But even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. So I conclude there is nothing better than to be happy and enjoy ourselves as long as we can. And people should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of their labor, for these are gifts from God. Now, when you get to verses like this, you see that Solomon has not surrendered completely to nihilism. He's not seeing no purpose at all, because he's beginning to recognize that God designed life in a way that would give the people who lived it something to enjoy, a level of pleasure. Now, the idea that if a little pleasure is good, then more pleasure is better, that gets us into trouble. But there's nothing wrong with the pleasures that God created us to enjoy. And Solomon concludes, you should do these things and you should enjoy them. And I know that whatever God does is final. Nothing can be added to it or taken from it. God's purpose is that people should fear Him. What is happening now has happened before, and what will happen in the future has happened before, because God makes the same things happen over and over again. Well, again, He didn't have the full understanding, so yeah, okay. He would see things happen over and over again and assume that God was behind all that. I also noticed that under the sun there is evil in the courtroom. More evidence that Proverbs was about court cases, because now he's talking about the courtroom which he presided over. Yes, even the courts of law are corrupt. If they were corrupt in Solomon's day, they were corrupt before Solomon's day, and they are to some extent corrupt even today. I said to myself, in due season God will judge everyone, both good and bad, for all their deeds. Now that is looking forward to an ultimate eternal viewpoint, looking outside the bounds of what's done under the sun. And when he sees that, then he sees, yes, God's going to ultimately set everything right. He will judge everyone, both good and bad, for all their deeds. I also thought about the human condition, how God proves to people that they are like animals. Well, the human being is an animal. He may have certain capabilities that the other animals don't have, but ultimately he's flesh and blood, and he's an animal. For people and animals share the same fate. Both breathe, or both have the same spirit, and both must die. So people have no real advantage over the animals. How meaningless. Both go to the same place. They came from dust, and they return to dust. For who can prove that the human spirit goes up and the spirit of animals goes down into the earth? Who can prove it? Well, nobody. Because nobody who has truly died has ever come back to tell us. Certainly no animal has done so. So what do we know? So I saw that there is nothing better for people than to be happy in their work. That is our lot in life, and no one can bring us back to see what happens after we die. Now this begins to push against traditional religious understanding, which seems to some extent to be founded in Greek culture and Greek thinking. And that's, when we talk about the Greek version in the footnote earlier, when we talk about Greek influence, like we did in our sermon last week, Greek ideology, Greek thinking, has had a major impact on our culture even today, and it has seeped into our religion. And one of those Greek ideas that has kind of taken our modern religious world by storm is the concept of the immortality of the soul, that nobody really dies. Their body dies, but then their soul goes either to heaven or hell or purgatory, or depending on what the belief is out there. And Solomon's saying, how can you prove it? How do you know what's going to happen? You don't. Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Again I observed all the oppression that takes place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, with no one to comfort them. The oppressors have great power, and their victims are helpless. So I concluded that the dead are better off than the living. But most fortunate of all are those who are not yet born, for they have not seen all the evil that is done, again, under the sun. And that's something that Solomon was not fully prepared to explain. Good God, bad world, why? He didn't really have an answer to that question. Then I observed that most people are motivated to success because they envy their neighbors. But this too is meaningless, like chasing the wind. Fools fold their idle hands, leading them to ruin. And yet, better to have one handful with quietness than two handfuls with hard work and chasing the wind. Or in other words, be content with what you have. Because otherwise, you just wear yourself out trying to get what you don't have. And when you get it, you won't enjoy it because you're going to end up wanting more. I observed yet another example of something meaningless under the sun. This is the case of a man who is all alone without a child or a brother, yet who works hard to gain as much wealth as he can. But then he asks himself, who am I working for? Why am I giving up so much pleasure now? It's all so meaningless and depressing. Two people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, two people lying together can keep each other warm. But how can one be warm alone? A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. David and, or rather Jonathan and his armor bearer might be an example of that. The three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. And in fact, even today, ropes are normally made with 3 twisted strands because it works out better. So the 3-fold or triple braided cord is not easily broken. So 2 is better than 1 and 3 is a little bit better. The futility of political power. It is better to be a poor but wise youth than an old and foolish king who refuses all advice. Such a youth could rise from poverty and succeed. He might even become king, though he has been in prison. But then everyone rushes to the side of yet another youth who replaces him. The second youth is what the Hebrew says. Endless crowds stand around him, or there's no end to all the people, to all those who are before them. But then another generation grows up and rejects him too. So it is all meaningless, like chasing the wind. That's an interesting metaphor, by the way. Just try and think about it, chasing the wind. You see people chasing things being blown about by the wind, but what about chasing the wind itself? Huh? Yeah, you get an idea of what he's saying. As you enter the house of God, verse 5:1 is numbered 417 in the Hebrew text. Okay, and then verses 5:2-20 are numbered 5:1-19 in the Hebrew text. And the meaning of the Hebrew in verse 8 and 9 is uncertain. We'll see that when we get there. All right, so as you enter the house of God, keep your ears open and your mouth shut. It is evil to make mindless offerings to God. Don't make rash promises. And don't be hasty in bringing matters before God. After all, God is in heaven and you are here on earth. So let your words be few. Too much activity gives you restless dreams. Too many words make you a fool. When you make a promise to God, don't delay in following through, for God takes no pleasure in fools. keep all the promises you make to him. It is better to say nothing than to make a promise and not keep it. Don't let your mouth make you sin, and don't defend yourself by telling the temple messenger that the promise you made was a mistake. That would make God angry, and he might wipe out everything you have achieved. All right, there's a bit of transactional understanding there rather than relational. And to a certain extent, that may be how Solomon thought. But still, there is wisdom in that for us. Better to say nothing than to make a promise and not keep it. Talk is cheap, like daydreams and other useless activities. Fear God instead. And this thing is just driving me nuts here, because I need to see how much time has passed and I can't see it. And
Any help?
well, normally, how the taskbar is supposed to go away so you can see what's under it?
Yeah.
It's not doing that.
I'm
And
good at driving you nuts. I can help it if you need it.
oh, well, yeah.
Or if it needs it.
Well, that made it go away on the other screen. I wonder if I can do that over here and make it go away over there. No, that didn't work. I wonder if I can do this. I wonder if I can tell the taskbar to not appear on that other display. There we go. No, I'll have to change that back, but okay, now I can see. I wanted to see how long we've been going so I know how much longer to go, and now I can see it. So I just made that thing go away. Now it probably won't go way over here, but that's okay. I can see what I need to see on this screen. So okay, I think we're ready for verse 8, the futility of wealth. Don't be surprised if you see a poor person being oppressed by the powerful, and if justice is being miscarried throughout the land. For every official is under orders from higher up, and matters of justice get lost in red tape and bureaucracy. Even the king milks the land for his own profit. That's one of the things it said. We're not absolutely positive what those verses mean. This is how they've decided to put it. But certainly we can identify with this concept of we're just trying to live our lives and go about what we need to do to keep life going day after day, but somebody has gone around and thrown up red tape and bureaucracy just to make it difficult for us. Those who love money will never have enough. How meaningless to think that wealth brings true happiness. The more you have, the more people come to help you spend it. So what good is wealth except perhaps to watch it slip through your fingers? People who work hard sleep well, whether they eat little or much. But the rich seldom get a good night's sleep. There's another serious problem I have seen under the sun. Hoarding riches harms the saver. Money is put into risky investments that turn sour, and everything is lost. In the end, there is nothing left to pass on to one's children. We all come to the end of our lives as naked and empty-handed as on the day we were born. We can't take our riches with us. Yeah, that's true. And this too is a very serious problem. People leave this world no better off than when they came. All their hard work is for nothing, like working for the wind. Throughout their lives, they live under a cloud, frustrated, discouraged, and angry. Well, there's a lot of people who live their lives like that. They're after success. They're after the approbation of others. They're after, whatever they think gives their life meaning, and then they die, and what happens to it all? Even so, I have noticed one thing, at least, that is good. It is good for people to eat, drink, and enjoy their work under the sun during the short life God has given them, and to accept their lot in life. And it is a good thing to receive wealth from God and the good health to enjoy it. To enjoy your work and accept your lot in life, this is indeed a gift from God. God keeps such people so busy enjoying life that they take no time to brood over the past. Now again, in these verses we see that Solomon has not surrendered to complete nihilism. He sees that there is something that's good. There is something that we should work toward. And that is a life of satisfaction and a life of enjoying the pleasures that are available to us. Ecclesiastes 6. And here we're going to get to the verses that those who have bought into the immortality of the soul don't like, because these verses don't teach that. There's another serious tragedy I have seen under the sun, and it weighs heavily on humanity. God gives some people great wealth and honor and everything they could ever want, but then He doesn't give them the chance to enjoy these things. Well, maybe it wasn't God doing it. He doesn't, He's not where He can understand that we are. They die and someone else, even a stranger, ends up enjoying their wealth. This is meaningless, a sickening tragedy. A man might have 100 children and live to be very old, but if he finds no satisfaction in life and doesn't even get a decent burial, it would be better for him to have been born dead, or to be born dead. And there were prophets who expressed that very same idea. Why wasn't I born dead?
That's depression.
Even Job said that at one point. Yeah, that's depression. His birth would have been meaningless, and he would have ended up in darkness. He wouldn't even have had a name, and he would never have seen the sun or known of its existence. Yet he would have had more peace than in growing up to be an unhappy man. He might live 1,000 years twice over, but still not find contentment. And since he must die like everyone else, well, what's the use? All people spend their lives scratching for food, but they never seem to have enough. So, are wise people really better off than fools? Do poor people gain anything by being wise and knowing how to act in front of others? Enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. Just dreaming about nice things is meaningless, like chasing the wind. Everything has already been decided. It was known long ago what each person would be. So there's no use arguing with God about your destiny. Now, I am going to suggest that I don't believe what he just said there. Some people do buy into the idea that God has already determined what's going to happen. God's already determined who is saved and who is lost. And they might even use this text to support that position. But then what's the point of God giving us freedom to choose for ourselves? If he's already determined, he didn't give us the ability to choose for ourselves. There are people who will tell you that. So, but I personally don't buy that. I think God did give us a level of agency and an ability to change the direction of our life, to change our trajectory, as someone might say, to aim for something and to work toward it and to be satisfied when we reach it, which is one of the things I think Solomon's telling us, that you need to find something attainable, attain it, and enjoy it. The more words you speak, the less they mean. So what good are they? In the few days of our meaningless lives, who knows how our days can best be spent? Our lives are like a shadow. Who can tell what will happen on this earth after we're gone? And I got confused about which chapter this was. So it wasn't what I was expecting here, didn't come up. That's okay. We'll keep going. We've got a little more time here. A good reputation is more valuable than costly perfume, and the day you die is better than the day you were born. Better to spend your time at funerals than at parties. After all, everyone dies. So the living should take this to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for sadness has a refining influence on us. A wise person thinks a lot about death, while a fool thinks only about having a good time. Better to be criticized by a wise person than to be praised by a fool. A fool's laughter is quickly gone, like thorns crackling in a fire. This also is meaningless. Extortion turns wise people into fools, and bribes corrupt the heart. Finishing is better than starting. Patience is better than pride. Control your temper, for anger labels you a fool. Don't long for the good old days. This is not wise. Wisdom is even better when you have money. Both are a benefit as you go through life. Wisdom and money can get you almost anything, but only wisdom can save your life. Accept the way God does things, for who can straighten what he has made crooked? Well, again, as we've said, Solomon didn't have the understanding of an enemy of God. So if life looked crooked, well, in his mind, God did it. We can say God doesn't put a crooked path before us. Jesus talked about a straight path. Now, to a certain extent, he meant it was narrow and not a lot of people found it. But I think he also suggested to us that God wasn't doing things just to confuse us. Enjoy prosperity while you can, but when hard times strike, realize that both come from God. Well, no, hard times don't come from God. They come from living in a broken world. And we know the source of this world's brokenness. So that's not from God, though Solomon would have thought so. Remember that nothing is certain in this life. How wonderful to be wise, to analyze and interpret things. Wisdom lights up a person's face, softening its harshness. Obey the king, since you vowed to God that you would. Don't try to avoid doing your duty, and don't stand with those who plot evil, for the king can do whatever he wants. His command is backed by great power. No one can resist or question it. Those who obey him will not be punished. Those who are wise will find a time and a way to do what is right, for there is a time and a way for everything, even when a person is in trouble. Indeed, How can people avoid what they don't know is going to happen? None of us can hold back our spirit from departing. None of us has the power to prevent the day of death. There is no escaping that obligation, that dark battle. And in the face of death, wickedness will certainly not rescue the wicked. I have thought deeply about all that goes on here under the sun, where people have the power to hurt each other. And isn't that really the ultimate problem with the world we live in? And that is that people have the power to hurt each other, and they will sometimes use it. I've seen wicked people buried with honor, yet they were the very ones who frequented the temple and are now praised in the same city where they committed their crimes. That's as in some Hebrew manuscripts, and the Greek version, many Hebrew manuscripts read, and are forgotten. All right. Yet they were the very ones who frequented the temple and are now praised in the same city where they committed their crimes. This too is meaningless. When a crime is not punished quickly, people feel it is safe to do wrong. But even though a person sins 100 times and still lives a long time, I know that those who fear God will be better off. The wicked will not prosper, for they do not fear God. Their days will never grow long like the evening shadows. Again, to a certain extent, there's some old covenant understanding there. This is not all that is meaningless in our world. In this life, good people are often treated as though they were wicked, and wicked people are often treated as though they were good. This is so meaningless. So, in verse 16 there, Solomon is actually breaking away from the old covenant understanding and saying, sometimes it doesn't work out the way the old covenant suggested. The people who do the right thing end up worse off than the people who do the wrong thing. And that is meaningless, he says. So I recommend having fun, because there's nothing better for people in this world than to eat, drink, and enjoy life. That way they experience some happiness along with all the hard work God gives them under the sun. There's that phrase, under the sun, again. In my search for wisdom and in my observation of people's burdens here on earth, I discovered that there is ceaseless activity day and night. I realized that no one can discover everything God is doing under the sun. Well, yeah, because God is infinite. We're finite. We can't grasp it all. We don't have that capacity. Not even the wisest people discover everything, no matter what they claim. Okay. Here's the chapter I was thinking of earlier. This, too, I carefully explored. Even though the actions of godly and wise people are in God's hands, no one knows whether God will show them favor. The same destiny ultimately awaits everyone, whether righteous or wicked, good or bad. And here, Solomon's actually kind of foreshadowing the words that Jesus would use, only he's doing it in the negative. The same destiny ultimately awaits everyone, whether righteous or wicked, good or bad. Ceremonially clean or unclean, religious or irreligious. Good people receive the same treatment as sinners, and people who make promises to God are treated like people who don't. Isn't that what Jesus said? God makes his rain fall on the righteous and on the wicked, and he makes his sun shine on all these people. And you need to be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. So, actually, I think here, Solomon is beginning to come to a realization that God is impartial, that he considers us all fundamentally equal, and he treats us all the same. He doesn't show favoritism. And that's pretty advanced for someone at Solomon's point in history. It seems so wrong that everyone under the sun suffers the same fate. Already twisted by evil, people choose their own mad course, for they have no hope. There's nothing ahead but death anyway. There's hope only for the living. As they say, it's better to be a live dog than a dead lion. And that might be a little hard for us to understand because in our culture, a dog is a man's best friend. That wasn't the culture of the Hebrews. The dog was the most despicable animal out there. The living at least know they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward, nor are they remembered. Whatever they did in their lifetime, loving, hating, envying, is all long gone. They no longer play a part in anything here on earth. So, go ahead. Eat your food with joy, drink your wine with a happy heart, for God approves of this. Wear fine clothes with a splash of cologne. Live happily with the woman you love through all the meaningless days of your life that God has given you under the sun. The wife God gives you is your reward for all your earthly toil. Whatever you do, do well, for when you go to the grave, there will be no work or planning or knowledge or wisdom. Grave there is footnote B to Sheol, okay. I have observed something else under the sun. The fastest runner doesn't always win the race, and the strongest warrior doesn't always win the battle. The wise sometimes go hungry, and the skillful are not necessarily wealthy. And those who are educated don't always lead successful lives. It's all decided by chance, by being in the right place at the right time. People can never predict when hard times might come. Like fish in a net or birds in a trap, people are caught by sudden tragedy. Here's another bit of wisdom that has impressed me as I have watched the way our world works. There was a small town with only a few people, and a great king came with his army and besieged it. A poor, wise man knew how to save the town, and so it was rescued. But afterward, no one thought to thank him. So even though wisdom is better than strength, those who are wise will be despised if they are poor. What they say will not be appreciated for long. Better to hear the quiet words of a wise person than the shouts of a foolish king. Better to have wisdom than weapons of war. But one sinner can destroy much that is good. Chapter 10. As dead flies cause even a bottle of perfume to stink, so a little foolishness spoils great wisdom and honor. A wise person chooses the right road, a fool takes the wrong one. You can identify fools just by the way they walk down the street. If your boss is angry at you, don't quit. A quiet spirit can overcome even great mistakes. There's another evil I have seen under the sun. Kings and rulers make a grave mistake when they give great authority to foolish people and low positions to people of proven worth. I have even seen servants riding horseback like princes and princes walking like servants. Now there's a certain level of what Solomon writes here of belief in a layered or tiered society where some people are more important than others, and we reject that idea in this group. But yeah, Solomon would have had that. If he hadn't, he wouldn't have lived the way he did. When you dig a well, you might fall in. When you demolish an old wall, you could be bitten by a snake. When you work in a quarry, stones might fall and crush you. When you chop wood, there is danger with each stroke of your axe. Using a dull axe requires great strength, so sharpen the blade. That's the value of wisdom. It helps you succeed.
Throw the right thing into the water and you can make your accent float.
Yeah. If a snake bites before you charm it, what's the use of being a snake charmer? Wise words bring approval, but fools are destroyed by their own words.
By their what?
Fools are destroyed by their own words.
Okay.
Fools base their thoughts on foolish assumptions, so their conclusions will be wicked madness.
Like I said, go look up the YouTube channel, Sovereign Justice.
Yeah. Well, you know what I thought there was in the computer industry, we talk about GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. If the best program, if it gets bad input, can't produce good output. The quality of the input determines the quality of the output. Garbage in, garbage out. So if in your philosophical approach to life, you base your philosophy on foolish assumptions, your conclusions are going to be wicked madness.
Well, this sovereign justice has nothing to do with sovereign citizen. It does probably untrue stories about problems that the HOA create and then refuse to accept that they're asking too much.
That they've made the world a worse place in their invalid attempts trying to make it better according to their own ideas of what's better.
Yeah, like finding somebody for having the wrong shade of mud.
Yeah. Verse 14 we didn't read yet. So we read verse 13 says, fools base their thoughts on foolish assumptions, so the conclusions will be wicked madness. And then Solomon writes, they chatter on and on. People with the stupidest ideas are likely the ones to do the most talking. Yeah. No one really knows what's going to happen. No one can predict the future. Fools are so exhausted by a little work, they can't even find their way home. What sorrow for the land ruled by a servant, the land whose leaders feast in the morning. Happy is the land whose king is a noble leader, and whose leaders feast at the proper time to gain strength for their work, not to get drunk. Laziness leads to a sagging roof. Idleness leads to a leaky house. Are you familiar with the poem of the Arkansas Traveler?
I've heard of it.
You know what the premise of it is?
I don't remember it. I just know I've heard it.
Yeah, well, that's the one where the traveler comes by and he sees a guy sitting outside a house in the rain. He's asking, well, why don't you go in your house? And he says, well, it doesn't really make any difference because my roof leaks. Well, why don't you fix your roof? Well, how am I going to fix my roof when it's raining? And then the guy says, well, what you need to do is wait till it's dry, and when it's dry, go up there and fix your roof.
What for? It's not right.
Yeah, and the guy says, well, go away for you give me a pain. My roof never leaks when it doesn't rain.
Right.
Laziness leads to a sagging roof. Idleness leads to a leaky house. A party gives laughter, wine gives happiness, and money gives everything. Never make light of the king, even in your thoughts, and don't make fun of the powerful, even in your own bedroom. For a little bird might deliver your message and tell them what you said. Okay. Verse 16 up there, we didn't talk much about it. What sorrow for the land ruled by a servant. The other possibility is a child, and that might make more sense given what Solomon says there. Send your grain across the seas, and in time profits will flow back to you. Or, footnote A, give generously, for the gifts will return to you later. The Hebrew reads, throw your bread on the waters, for after many days you will find it again. But divide your investments among many places, for you do not know what risks might lie ahead. And that's investment advice that wise people still follow. You want to have a diversified portfolio so that even if one sector of the economy struggles, another might do well. So if you've got your portfolio diversified, you're going to come out normally better off than if you didn't invest. When clouds are heavy, the rains come down. Whether a tree falls north or south, it stays where it falls. Farmers who wait for perfect weather never plant. If they watch every cloud, they never harvest. Just as you cannot understand the path of the wind or the mystery of a tiny baby growing in its mother's womb, so you cannot understand the activity of God who does all things. And this would have been more true for Solomon than it is for us. We believe that God can be trusted, and while we don't know everything that's going on, and things may happen that we don't understand, we understand that at least some of them aren't God's doing, they're not God's intent. You'll notice it says you can't understand the activity of God who does all things. Well, he would have had that understanding. God does everything. Well, no, God doesn't do everything. There are other actors out there making things happen. Plant your seed in the morning and keep busy all afternoon, for you don't know if profit will come from one activity or another, or maybe both. Life is sweet. How pleasant to see a new day dawning. When people live to be very old, let them rejoice in every day of life. But let them also remember that there will be many dark days. Everything still to come is meaningless. Young people, or young man. It's wonderful to be young. Enjoy every minute of it. Do everything you want to do. Take it all in. But remember that you must give an account to God for everything you do. So refuse to worry and keep your body healthy. But remember that youth, with the whole life before you, is meaningless. And we may go over just a little bit. I see we've got a minute and a half left. But since we're going to start the last chapter, let's just go ahead and finish the last chapter, and we'll have finished the book this evening. Don't let the excitement of youth cause you to forget your Creator. Honor Him in your youth before you grow old and say, life is not pleasant anymore. Remember Him before the light of the sun, moon, and stars is dim to your old eyes, and rain clouds continually darken your sky. Remember Him before your legs, the guards of your house, start to tremble, and before your shoulders, the strong men stoop. Remember Him before your teeth, your few remaining servants, stop grinding, and before your eyes, the women looking through the windows, see dimly. Now, this is being interpretive about the figurative language that Solomon uses in this last chapter to discuss the aging process. So if I read that in the NIV, let me turn to that quickly. It reads like this. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars grow dark and the clouds return after the rain, when the keepers of the house tremble and the strong men stoop, when the grinders cease because they are few and those looking through the windows grow dim, when the doors to the street are closed and the sound of grinding fades, and so on. So that's less interpreting, more rendering the figurative language that Solomon used. Reading on here in this version. Remember him before the door to life's opportunities is closed and the sound of work fades. Now you rise at the first chirping of the birds, but then all their sounds will grow faint. Remember him before you become fearful of falling and worry about danger in the streets, before your hair turns white like an almond tree in bloom, and you drag along without energy like a dying grasshopper, and the caperberry no longer inspires sexual desire. Remember him before you near the grave, your everlasting home, when the mourners will weep at your funeral. Yes, remember your Creator now while you are young, before the silver cord of life snaps and the golden bowl is broken. Don't wait until the water jar is smashed at the spring and the pulley is broken at the well, for then the dust will return to the earth, and the spirit, or the breath, will return to God who gave it. Everything is meaningless, says the teacher, completely meaningless. Keep this in mind. The teacher was considered wise, and he taught the people everything he knew. He listened carefully to many proverbs, studying and classifying them. The teacher sought to find just the right words to express truths clearly, or he sought to write what was upright and true. Okay? The words of the wise are like cattle prods, painful but helpful. Their collected sayings are like a nail-studded stick with which a shepherd drives the sheep. But, my child, let me give you some further advice. Be careful, for writing books is endless and much study wears you out. That's the whole story. Here is my final conclusion. Fear God and obey his commands, for this is everyone's duty. God will judge us for everything we do, including every secret thing, whether good or bad. So he goes through and he looks at all the foolishness of life and all its meaninglessness, and he comes to this conclusion. God has made it possible for you to enjoy this short life on this planet. And since you're here, that's what you should do. Enjoy it. Under the sun, life may be meaningless. But that's not all there is. Because eventually God will judge everything we do. And there is a reward for having that relationship with your Creator that transforms character and prepares us for that life of eternal joy. So, there. We've gotten through the book of Ecclesiastes. It took us just over an hour and a half. And we will read the Song of Songs. That's going to be an interesting exercise. I'm not going to try and predict how that will go. So we invite you to join us for that next week. And until next week, we say goodbye and God bless.
Tomorrow that you preach?
You said something?
Yeah, is it tomorrow that you preach?
You're not speaking loudly enough for it to come through where I can hear it.
Is it tomorrow that you preach?
No, that was last week, so they can join us next week.
Was I hear?
Yeah, you probably slept through it, but
Huh?
you probably slept through most of it, but you were here.
All right.
Okay, like I say, goodbye and God bless.